My respect for Shakur Stevenson used to be here, now it's here. You know, a lot of fighters in the sport of boxing, they sugarcoat things. They talk all that talk and they like to say things like, oh, this fighter's not as good as me. He's not as big of a star as me. But Shakur Stevenson, in, you know, a recent podcast interview on $1 Million Worth of Game, if you guys haven't checked out that podcast, it's a great podcast. I encourage you guys to check it out. Shakur Stevenson was interviewed about, you know, everything going on right now in the sport of boxing, how he's evolving into that superstar, and basically, you know, a lot of people are putting their stock in Shakur. Like I've said it before, I think that Shakur Stevenson is the future of the sport. He's obviously a well-established fighter as it is already, but I think that there's still another level that he's going to rise to in the next few years, and I think that those big wins, those big fights with guys like Gervonta Davis, guys like Teofimo Lopez, guys like Devin Haney, I think that those are all big fights for him, and I think those are the fights that are going to, you know, change him and transform him into, you know, a superstar, bring him to that level of superstardom that he needs. But, you know, the reason why my respect, you know, kind of skyrocketed for Shakur is because he talked about Tank. You know, he talked about the situation with Devin Haney, the situation with Frank Martin. He didn't have nice things to say about Frank Martin. Obviously, you guys can kind of imagine what I'm heading towards. For the most part, what Shakur was saying was that he's like the biggest duck ever. You know, like he's really trying to duck Shakur. And I'm putting it nicely. There were also some explicit, you know, statements said in that interview. But Shakur is basically saying Frank Martin just didn't want to fight. He would literally DM him, tell him, like, this is what I'm getting, this is what you're going to get, and this is how much the fight would, you know, is expected to make revenue-wise. This is your cut, this is my cut. And he was being real about it, and, you know, in the DMs, Frank Martin was like, okay, he was about it, but once that contract was sent from Top Rank to, you know, PBC, not PBC, but, you know, Earl Spence's promotion, like, Frank Martin wasn't with it anymore. He decided to not pursue it. But I think it's like I said before, that was a big mistake for Frank Martin, because you may never get an opportunity like that again unless, you know, he has something like Isak Cruz, Gervonta Davis. But if it's not that, then I think he made a big mistake by not taking whatever the case was, 25% against a guy like Shakur Stevenson, because if he really is confident that he wants to fight the best and he thinks that he could beat the best, you jump on that opportunity in Frank Martin's position, because Shakur is well established at, you know, 30, 35, and you know, people are going to argue with that, but who else do you guys really put in that same category with Tank that could really give him a lot of trouble? There's not really anybody right now. Loma, Keyshawn Davis, like there are a few select names that I think could really be intriguing fights for him and competitive fights. But Frank Martin didn't want it, but Shakur was talking about how it would be different if Tank were to send an offer, then Shakur would jump at it, because he said that Tank is the biggest superstar in the sport of boxing. So, you know, he understands that they have their little issues in the past, maybe still do, because, you know, Shakur said he wants to step in the ring with Tank, and then Tank saw that as disrespectful. But either way, Gervonta Davis is a superstar, and Shakur, that's what Shakur is getting at. He's the biggest star in boxing. So Shakur was saying how he wouldn't even, you know, think about sending a counter offer to Tank, because he feels like he doesn't have a right to, even though he probably does. You know, every fighter has a right to negotiate, but he said that against a guy like Tank, that level of superstardom that the fight would bring him to, he, you know, would take anything. So at that point, you know, I respect Shakur, because a lot of fighters would say, I need to get paid this much or the fight's not going to happen, when there are two big names. But Shakur's a big name as well. He's one of the talented fighters that is expected to compete with and potentially beat a guy like Tank. And here he is saying that, you know, Tank's a superstar, Tank's the most talented fighter in boxing, me and him is going to be the biggest fight ever, and I wouldn't give him a counteroffer because he's the face of boxing. You know, he's the one selling these tickets, he's the one with the name. So Frank Martin was a different situation, because Shakur was saying, you know, Frank doesn't bring anything to the table in terms of, you know, eyeballs, pay-per-views. If that fight would even be on pay-per-view, I don't know what the case would be. But, you know, I give respect to Shakur, because it's not easy to admit things like that. It means that you have to put your ego aside and, you know, admit that Tank's the bigger superstar. And sometimes people get shocked at that. They don't like to hear that from fighters, but Shakur is keeping it real, and he knows that, you know, his capabilities within that squared circle, within the ring, are going to speak for themselves. And once he's able to land that fight with Tank, hopefully it happens eventually. I need that fight, relatively soon, the next 2 to 3 years, the latest, in my opinion. But when that fight happens, Shakur is so ready and he's so confident that he's going to win. So he knows that it's worth it no matter what he's getting paid. If he beats Tank, then he gets a large portion of the followers, and he becomes that shot caller. He becomes that face of boxing. But it starts with getting these big fights. He tried to get Frank Martin, but now he's settling for the number 6 ranked lightweight in the sport of boxing, Edwin De Los Santos. So I expect Shakur to take care of that, handle business. But just long term, it was cool to see that he's that level of humility from Shakur. He's not being so. He's not putting his ego above the sport. He understands where Tank's at and where people, place Tank in terms of being a superstar, being that face of boxing, and he's willing to negotiate, but he understands that Tank deserves that bigger cut because he is that superstar. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. I got a lot of respect for Shakur after that interview, but I encourage you guys to check it out. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think about this entire situation between Shakur and Tank, the potential mega fight. But thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.
That's going to do it for another Nads Fight Media video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been your boy, Matt Nabong, with another video. Hope you guys enjoyed it all. Thank you guys for the constant support. Salute to y'all always. It's been your boy.